So, welcome to Ekamra Sports Season 7, and this is a new book which we're introducing today. Think, Train, Thrive by Maithili Bhuptani. She's done a lot of work as a performance mindset coach, and she's currently with the Reliance Foundation. A very warm welcome to you, Maithili. First of all, what we would like to know from you is the kind of work that you have done and what drove you towards it.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here today. It means a lot. To begin with, I think my whole purpose of this book sort of came across in terms of the idea of changing the mindset of Indian athletes, Indian sporting fraternity, from kind of looking at psychology as only when you go to when there's a problem or where there's a weakness, to looking at it where you're looking at it as an enhancing tool. So I've been working in this space for about 6 to 7 years now, and I've realized that every time I say I'm a sports psychologist, athletes will be a little skeptical to kind of speak to me or start talking to me because they think that only when you have an issue do I need to go to a psychologist. So that's the main reason that kind of drove me to write this book and kind of put the message across to the entire Indian sporting fraternity that it's not just for the weak, it's for everyone.
In very simple terms, because we connect through our medium with a lot of athletes, how do you help an athlete, and what is the kind of help that they require? Also, are they still cagey about speaking to someone like you? Because despite the fact that, like you say, you've been in the business for 6 to 7 years, there is a definite mindset about opening up.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what I help athletes is train the brain or the mind like any other muscle. So the same way they are training their other muscles in the gym, doing their strength and conditioning, doing their physical training on court, on track. That's literally what I do with the mind, is just train the mind to be ready for the peak performance, as we call it. So at the time of the race, so at the time of the match, they need to be at their peak. So that's what we aim to bring across through the work that we do together. So we help them build confidence, we help them return to sport if they're coming back from an injury, we help them just kind of peak their performance, in simpler words. So that's what we literally do. In terms of the connectivity or the sort of acceptance that's still there, it's much better than when I just started off, or when I just stepped foot into this field. But I still feel there's a slight change that is still needed in terms of from the up, like from the federations, from the coaches. If it comes top down, it's a lot easier for athletes to accept it as normal and not as just something when we go to when we have a problem or when we have an injury.
The blurb on your book, which is written in yellow right on top, is Unlocking Mental Strength in Indian Sport. Ever since Neeraj did what he did, a lot of emphasis is played on mental strength. In cricket, of course, there are examples like Virat Kohli, who thrived on the fact that mental strength drives you forward. Fitness, of course, but it is all in the mind. So how do you unlock that mental strength in very simple terms?
I think you just need to unlock it by giving it equal importance as your physical body. So if you're training your physical body, train your mind as well. So if you do that hand in hand, you can unlock it very, very easily. But the problem that we face is we're not giving it equal time. So we think that, okay, I need to do only physical training. And if I sit and do some mind work, I'm going to take away that physical time from my training. So I think it needs to go hand in hand. And when we do train both together, they need to be in sync. Then you're unlocking the Indian mental strength, basically.
I mean, you discuss sports psychology as misunderstood in India. Now, has that stigma changed, and to what extent?
Sure. Like I said, when I started off, it was still quite new, and I would have to kind of really explain to athletes or to coaches what a psychologist does before I actually do my work. So a lot of time actually goes in terms of educating them around what we can help with and what we actually do. So that's the first piece. Now I think because where there's a lot of exposure to what foreign athletes are doing, what athletes are doing across the globe, but there is obviously that awareness that there is a multidisciplinary approach that is required in terms of nutrition, psychology, strength and conditioning. So there's a holistic approach that is now somewhat spoken about a lot more than before. But even then, I still think psychology still sort of comes last after nutrition, strength, biomechanics, everything. It's still sort of seen, last. So that's just one thing that we want to change. I mean, we as psychologists are trying to kind of get that message across that we need to treat the mental training equal to physical training.
A lot of foreign coaches have come into India, whether it is track and field or in other spheres. And I remember recently the way Paddy Upton, who worked for quite a long time with the Indian cricket team, saying that now among the hockey players, because he's associated with Indian hockey,
Yes.
we have 16 Virat Kohlis on the field where when it comes to fitness and mental toughness. So they are all hitting on that. My point is, which I would like to understand better from you, is that with foreign coaches coming in, has it helped in a larger way to connect the athletes to someone like you?
Definitely, I think so, because they sort of come in with that experience, and our athletes also look at them saying that, these guys have worked with athletes abroad and they've gotten the results. So if we do something that they did abroad, then definitely, it's in my book. I talk about how it needs to come from the coach. For an athlete, the coach is, pretty much everything when it comes to training. So if it comes from the coach, there is always more importance given to it rather than, we trying to just go and make our way through it. It needs to come through the coach. It's always more productive for us to do our work, actually.
You introduce mental periodization. You've spoken about that in your book. Could you explain how it works in practice and how overuse or burnout could be avoided?
Sure. So I keep saying, the same way we kind of periodize our physical training, mental training needs to be periodized the same way. And in simple words, our mental skills program or a training that we do with the athletes needs to be in sync with their competition calendar. We need to sort of know when we want that peak performance, when is their rest period, when is their sort of training period, when is their off season, because there are different skills that we as practitioners teach them in these periods. So we need to work very, very closely with the coach, the physio, everyone, to sort of know what is happening outside of our sessions. It's not like I can just take the athlete, do my work, and leave them to sort of do the physical training side by side. It needs to all work in sync for it to work, for the benefit of the athlete. So, I mean, mental periodization literally works the same way how we periodize physical training, but it's sort of what we do mentally. So it's not that, we just do training in a room with the athlete one-on-one, and then they're sort of doing something completely different outside when they're training. So if I'm doing a visualization with them, it needs to make sense for them that they practice it at a particular time in the season and what type of visualization they're doing. So it needs to be very, very coherent to what we're doing in the physical training.
And could you share a particularly memorable athlete story which is epitomized in your book and how it helped that particular person?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the athletes that I've mentioned about is actually a winter sport athlete, which is quite niche in our country at the moment. But this athlete was really, really having a difficult time in terms of jitters, as we call them, pre-race jitters, as we call them in our language. So you feel really nervous before a race, and how that athlete kind of overcame that through a lot of mental skills and only mental skills training. So that's something that I've spoken about in the book. We formed a routine. We did a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy to kind of help the athlete change the way they look at a competition. So when an athlete looks at a competition in a way that is scaring them and not kind of exciting them, then they will automatically feel nervous. But when you're taking away that whole feeling of scared, looking at it as, somewhere pressure, all of these things, we break it down, and then we help the athlete look at the competition very differently. The whole approach, the whole mindset towards it changes. Of course, with the pre-race routines that we worked on, the breathing techniques that we help the athlete with, all of that kind of plays a role in helping the athlete feel ready before the race and not nervous, as we call them.
Is there a distinction between what you try to impart compared to fitness or the health of that athlete? I mean, it is a lay question, but I'm very interested in asking you it.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, health and physical health sort of goes hand in hand with mental health, of course. Like we all know, if there is something that's troubling us physically, be it an injury or be it an illness, it does impact mental health in a direct way, right? So I think, as I keep saying this, both of them kind of go very, very closely together, and it's not just one way or the other. So now, if there's mental burnout, the chances of an injury or physical injury are also more. So it's not just one way, but it's also vice versa, which is why we sort of need to take into account the mental health as well as the physical health for the athlete to kind of go longer in their career and kind of sustain longer and not get burnt out, as we say in our language.
In your genre, what separates the elite performer from, say, an aspiring performer or an established performer, but not an elite performer? Say someone is there and the other person is here. What separates them?
I think the most important thing is just discipline and routine. Like we've seen in cases of Neeraj Chopra, everyone sort of really talks about the discipline, the hard work, and the routine that he follows consistently. So it's not that you do it just before one important event and you sort of get out of that discipline completely after the event is over. You need to have consistency in terms of your discipline, in terms of your routines, be it your sleep, be it your nutrition, be it your physical training, and be it your mental training. All of this needs to have some sort of routine that you take into account, which will then separate you from an elite athlete to someone who's aspiring to just sort of be there. So I think that's something that really stands out for elite performers.
Neeraj transformed his fitness. As we all know, Virat Kohli set a massive example. I'm sorry, I'm coming to cricket as an example
Of
because
course, yeah.
a lot of people understand that better maybe. So Virat completely transformed the whole cricket scenario. All the youngsters wanted to be like Virat Bhai. Similarly, with they want to be like Neeraj Bhai when it comes to fitness. But can you explain that preceding, say, a Neeraj, there were a lot of athletes who were pretty good performers, may not have reached the peak, and they were also going through fitness routines, and they were also being supported by a coaching staff. Was there a lacuna?
Sort of, you can say so, but I wouldn't say so entirely. I mean, it's not always that every athlete who has a whole team with them will sort of do well, right? I think it's also the preparation that goes beforehand that you and I will never sort of know, or any layman will never really know in terms of what goes on behind the scenes. And I think that's what elite athletes do really differently, is when they're behind the scenes, they're doing a lot of other things, making a lot of sacrifices, making a lot of compromises, and obviously putting in a lot of effort in that training, which we don't see. And then we think that, okay, they just come out there and sort of perform. But that's something that they do differently on a day-to-day basis, which is what kind of forms them to peak at that particular event, right? So I think it builds up, and that's what separates like Virat Kohli, Neeraj Chopra, because these guys, like we see, they're like grinding all year round. They're not sort of enjoying too much even after a big win. They're back to the grind immediately after a big event. So I think that's what separates an elite performer as well. Like, you're not celebrating your successes for too long. You know that you are humble enough to kind of get back to your routine or get back to your training in a couple of days and sort of get to the next chapter. So it's not like that's it and my goal sort of achieved. I think that's also something that separates the two of them.
Our sports team is listening in very carefully to what you're saying, and a question has come from the boys, which you may find it interesting, so I'll read it out for you. So they are asking you that you've been working with India's hurdles national record holders Jyoti Araji and Tejas Shirse. So could you share your experience of working with them, especially with Jyoti currently sidelined by injury and Tejas preparing to make his debut at the World Championships?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I'm currently not working with them. I was working with them earlier. I'm now taking up a new project. But I think coming back to like Jyoti first, there is this resilience in her. I mean, the day she kind of got injured, the first thing that she wanted to do was kind of, when can I make a comeback? So there's some sort of resilience factor in her that pushes her. So she wants to kind of make that comeback as soon as possible. She didn't kind of take too long to feel sad about the injury, or to kind of take too much time to worry about what's going to happen. She knew that, okay, this is what needs to be done. I need to get surgery done, I need to get back to my rehab, and then I need to get return to sport done. So it's more about the processes, which helps an athlete to get back instead of worrying about what's already happened. So in this case, I think this is what's helped her, is her resilience to kind of fight back this injury and come back stronger when she makes a return. In the case of Tejas, we all know that he's had several amazing races, but he's always missed out by like fractions of milliseconds and whatnot over the last 2 years. But again, with him, he's never given up, right? He's always had that attitude of, I'm going to keep trying, I'm going to keep going, no matter how difficult this journey gets, I'm still going to keep trying. And look, he's made his debut to World Championships today. So I think that's something that keeps these athletes going, and they don't kind of pull back from what their aim or their goal is.
Well said. Maithili, did you ever face pushback from athletes or coaches who believed mental preparation was unnecessary? Did you encounter anything like that in the early stages of your association?
I mean, to some extent, it wasn't really resistance or pushbacks, I would say, but I think it was just the lack of awareness or the lack of education for like lack of better word, in terms of what they didn't really understand what we can help with. And I think that's the problem that we face really often, is when they realize what value we bring to the table, they sort of include us in the whole performance team. But till then, they're sort of resistant, or they're sort of skeptical whether is this really needed or not. There is a very traditional mindset of a coach across the world, that the coach is everything, in terms of the mindset. They look after motivating athletes, they look after the physical training. So that is something that obviously takes some time to kind of get through, in terms of why we need different resources in the sports science team. And something that athletes may or may not be able to share with the coach could be shared with the performance mindset coach. That's something that differs. So that education, or that little bit of awareness sort of pulls you back sometimes. But once you have that, and you have these clear conversations with the coaches or the federations, it's a lot easier then.
While reviewing a documentary which was made on Ben Stokes a couple of years ago, he spoke about very candidly about his struggles with mental health, then overcoming them, and of course now he's one of the greatest cricketers. The reason I'm bringing that up is that he spoke about a T20 match, limited overs match, the final over, which was a world title, and a lot of runs were required. In comes Carlos Brathwaite, hammers him for 4 to 5 sixes, if I remember correctly. And he says it was devastating. He says it's very easy to say move on, but I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat. It had an impact on my career. So in the Indian context, how do cultural attitudes towards failure come in? How do you help them? Because this is one aspect which is rarely spoken about. I mean, in a final, in the ODI final, after 10 matches, Rohit Sharma and his men lose. It is
Yeah.
gutting, devastating. It's very hard to watch even as a fan. How do these people cope?
Yeah. No, I think, and I'm so glad you brought this up, because like Ben Stokes, Michael Phelps, all of these athletes, when they were struggling with their mental health, or when they were struggling with a lot of performance issues, which were then kind of dealt with, they had that sort of acceptance to seek help and go to the psychiatrist or the psychologist, for example, and sort of accept that this is something that I need to work on. When it comes to the Indian context, it's very rare that you'll find athletes openly talking about it. And now that we have athletes talk about mental health, like Virat Kohli, saying that mental strength is so important, people are looking up to him, and that's what sets an example. But there are very few that talk about it so openly even today. So I think the first part is just like the difficulty of going and seeking help, even though you might be struggling, you might be in a slump of a performance, or you might be having back to back like failures, for example. So I think the first thing is just sort of having that help when required at the right time. Second is, I think failure is obviously seen as in India, like, okay, don't worry, try again the next time, or like everyone fails, you got to keep trying, right? I mean, that's the very common statements that we hear across from anyone when anyone loses, or when it's something like a failure, right? How do they sort of deal with this failure? But what did that failure mean to them? What impact did it have on their self identity, their self esteem, and their self confidence? That's something that needs to be dealt with before they can try again. I mean, something that is shattered, if your self confidence is shattered, how are you going to be able to try again, right? So I come back to the fact that something that's broken or something that's shattered needs to be first fixed, and then you can try like rebuilding it or repainting it, in other words. But otherwise you just can't build from something from zero. So I think that factor, in terms of what are you trying to do, what impact it has, what that failure meant to you, needs to be addressed, and then you can try. So I think that one step is what we're missing, and then we just tell athletes to try, but how will they try, right? I think that's what's missing.
Maithili, last pit stop on this conversation has been very interesting. So, as mental health becomes more prominent globally, how do you see Indian sports psychology evolving over the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, I think this is a space that is absolutely growing, demanding, and people are like really, really understanding the need of it now. Be it recreational athletes, be it grassroots level athletes, be it elite level athletes, everyone is now understanding the role of the mind of the sports psychologist with the team. And I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it is going to be a massive shift in terms of, what we looked at, say 5-10 years ago to the next 5-10 years. I think these 20 years are definitely going to be extremely promising for India in terms of what the future looks like for our athletes, if we sort of give it the right direction, and we sort of encourage the whole mindset training aspect of it completely with the physical training.
Maithili, thank you very much for your time. All the very best for your book. I really hope a lot of the coaches and athletes and people in general tune in to try and understand the great work that you're trying to do. And we wish you all the very best in your career. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.